4 years and a lesser income ago, my family of then too moved out of our dinky apartment and decided to rent a house. We found one for rent by a rather immense church that was across the street from the hospital my wife worked at. Thinking of our wee one that was only a few months old, this meant she could nurse easily. We did have a couple of misgivings about this house, like the gaping crawl spaces in the basement that were creepy as hell to get out, and an entire room infested with spiders and bugs, thanks to another crawl space. However, we sealed the holes with reflective insulation, sprayed the heck out of it for bugs, and avoided the basement unless doing laundry. It was our first experience having space for our kids, a real dining room and living room, so we were excited. I worked nights and my wife worked days, so I took care of the kids during the day and worked until midnight. One night, while I was working my data entry crap, my wife called me in a panic saying that the doorbell had gone off. Now this was an old doorbell that actually rang bells to play a charming little tune. I quirked an eyebrow and made a joke, but then she said it wasn't the same tune. It was something discordant. Around this time, my oldest started getting scared at night. I pawned it off as faulty old wiring and thought little of it. One day, playing with my older son and watching my little one shake the crap out of his toys, I got to hear it. The entity caused, or not, it may have been a cold chill down my spine. I shook it off, but when I saw the shadow of someone walking upstairs out of the corner of my eye, I froze and immediately thought, it's my poor eyesight or maybe a floater in my eye that I caught. Then, my oldest, then 3, says, "Was that Mama?" That was it. Time for a walk. Get the wagon. Hope your diapers are clean. I might need a diaper too. Let's go outside in the happy sunshine and I'll try not to run or whatever, but we're going now. The bell did not stop. After that, it would ring with the same discordant tune in the dead of night. We made jokes on how it seemed vaguely similar to parts of the Oscar Mayer Wiener song. We were poor and we couldn't afford to move. We ended up having to move regardless. The church decided to sell it without letting us know. We had to get out. Luckily, we ended up finding an apartment opening at the nice place next door to a wacko who was massing with guns and explosives. The funny part is that we moved into the first place to get away from wackos. What do you think? Before I start, I'll give you some background information. I'm a 14-year-old male from Victoria, Australia. I live around a half hour from Queenlong, which is about an hour from Melbourne. My area is what is considered the country. I also have a large reserve only about a block from my house. This story takes place around 2 weeks ago. I was home alone on a Saturday night and my mom and dad were in Melbourne for a business meeting. My sister was with her boyfriend and would be home later. I was in the lounge room watching Netflix when I heard a thunk on the front veranda. It was too early for my sister to be home, so I thought it was the neighbor's dog. He sometimes jumps the fence and comes looking for food or something to play with. I went to the front door and looked through the window to the side. It was not the dog. There was a tall figure, maybe 210 centimeters tall, which is about 7 feet for you Americans. It had goat's legs covered in gray fur with black hooves and bright yellow eyes, which looked right back at me. I ran back to the living room in blind panic. What the fuck was that? I thought. In a random idea, I grabbed my phone and started playing the loudest song I could find, which happened to be Hero by Jonathan Young. This was an attempt to either scare or lure the beast away. Then I heard a window smash behind me. I ran to the kitchen to grab something to protect myself, which ended up being a cleaver. This thing started thudding down the hall towards the room I was in, and it was probably 30 seconds, but it felt like hours, waiting for that thing to appear. Finally, I spotted its glowing eyes in the darkness and ran at it swinging. I felt my knife stab into something and I pushed it deeper, while twisting. The creature screamed in pain and pulled back, running away and jumping out of the window. I spent the next 3 hours locked in my room with 2 knives and a torch next to me. When my sister came home later, she asked what was wrong, but I just stuttered. Window. Good step, over and over. My sister came out with me to look around and we found large hoof prints in the hall and in the yard. We stayed together the entire night. I still heard the clapping of its feet every night just outside my window, probably looking for what hurt it, or a new way in. It hasn't come back for a few days and I'm hoping that I never see it again. We are Catholic, and in the town I lived there was a Catholic church that kept its doors open 24 hours a day, so people could go pray. A little after 2:15 a.m., we were walking and decided to go in. We entered the church through the front and made our way to the stairs facing the altar. We knelt on the stairs and began praying. After about 5 minutes, I heard the side door to my right slam shut. In a quiet church at 2:30 a.m., that is super loud. We both spun in that direction and saw nothing. Before we could speak, the distinct sound of running footsteps emanated from the front of the side door, then made their way towards the front entrance behind us. It was so quiet, otherwise we could follow the sound with our eyes. The footstep ran past the front entrance. If they were human, it would have to be on their left, to the stairs that lay to our right as we faced the front. They ascended the stairs, and all sound ceased. We looked right at each other, dumbfounded and unsure of what to say. Suddenly, the church bells began to ring, and I instinctively looked over to my watch. It was 2:30. Breaking our silence, I remarked that they must have always rang at 2:30 and I never noticed it before. We sat there for maybe 90 seconds, discussing what had happened, when suddenly 2 police officers walked into the church. The police station is 2 buildings from the church. Well, the officers asked if we had rung the bells. No, I replied. We were praying. If we had, we wouldn't have had time to make it back to the altar before you got here. He realized that was true, and the 2 officers walked up to the stairs and then climbed back down. My girlfriend and I sat there waiting for them. Maybe after about 2 minutes they came back down and announced that not only had they not seen anyone, but the door leading to the bells was padlocked from the outside. Did you guys see anyone? The same officer asked. These bells never ring at 2:30. We both replied that we hadn't, and I wasn't going to mention ghostly footsteps, and they thanked us and told us to be careful, and left. To this day, I have no idea what we heard, but we both remember it happening to this day. What do you guys... This happened when I was 10 or 11 years old. So it would be around 1978 or 1979. While I was younger, I was involved with the church, and this happened one Sunday morning while I was helping set up for Mass. I was the only one in the building setting up when I heard a loud bang coming from the choir loft at the other end of the building. Curious, I stepped out from where I was and called out, "Hello," and there was no answer. So, I figured that the person just didn't hear me and was doing what they needed to do in order to get ready. I was looking up towards the choir loft to see if I could see the person. There was no one there, and I figured that something had just fallen down and the noise just echoed throughout the church. Right then and there, I had the feeling that I wasn't alone. Normally, I wouldn't have minded because I figured that the organist came in early to get ready. But this was different. I had this uneasy feeling, and not only was my life in jeopardy, but my soul. It was a fear that I've never felt before or since. As I was looking up at the choir loft, I couldn't see anyone, yet I could sense that there was something up there. It then appeared to me. It was a shapeless and formless figure, but it was exuding or giving off this evil that just penetrated through me like a sound would at a concert if you were standing too close to the amps. What I felt went way beyond the fight or flight reaction people talk about when faced in a situation like this. I was frozen there, beyond being scared, and my mind didn't process things for a few seconds. Then all of a sudden, I guess my mind snapped me back to reality. and I just ran and took off out of the church and stayed there until I saw the priest come out of the rectory and started going over to the church. I didn't realize how far I ran until I started walking back to the church. I had run about 100 to 150 feet from the church. When the priest had seen me fully dressed to take part in Mass and seen how freaked out I was, he asked me what had happened. So I told him what happened and what I had seen and felt. He tried to reassure me that it was probably my imagination, that it was an old church and that it might have just been something falling or something mechanical. The thing is, I've been in that building long enough to know the sounds of the mechanical devices and the way they kick off. Another thing is, I would know that my imagination wouldn't give me that life-threatening feeling, or being able to tell that there was something giving off such an evil that reverberated throughout my body. I've always been a skeptical person, even since I was this age, and not only that, I've never let my mind get the better of me. I've never lost my faith in God and his advisory, and I feel that this one was some kind of evil spirit or demon. And since that day, whenever I went into that church, I always made sure that there would be someone else there, so I wouldn't have to come across that thing again. So this happened in February or late January of 2015. I and my friends decided to try urban exploring. I wasn't really in the condition to walk or run because I had recently suffered a pretty intense concussion. Alright, so we decided to park on the opposite side of the asylum. The photo you see in the thumbnail is a small church or a school-like building on a small path leading to the asylum. I'm not certain if it was part of it, but it most likely was. The entirety of that building was caved in, so the chance of us exploring it was very little. We didn't have any rope or anything to pull us up. We decided to continue onward, and through some incredibly thick forest and brush, we had to climb over a massive tree on the only animal path in our sight. The more and more we walked, the eerier the atmosphere became. I saw something white out of the corner of my eye, and man, was I not disappointed. White notes, paper sheets, just random paper sheets strewn throughout the immediate forest before the asylum. I swear to God, it felt like the Slender Man game. I'll attach photos to the comments. Besides my buddy T being spooked, me and S were in high spirits. Bandanas on our face, knife in our hands, along with flashlights and our phones. We were all black hoodies, except for T in the thumbnail. As we passed the notes and reached the end of the forest, we saw the eeriness of the biggest building on asylum grounds. It had abandoned semi-trailers there to rust there for eternity. I ran as fast as we could to the building to stay in cover. As we reached the first half of the huge building, we turned on our flashlights and walked inside. I saw the beds those children died on. I saw disgusting rooms with pillows and beds strewn about. I'm a firm atheist, but that place made me feel uncomfortable, incredibly uncomfortable. There was lots of graffiti too. Some disrespectful, others commenting on the duality of men. Some of it was the N-word and swastikas. Penises too. Me and S just felt so pumped and alert, like movie stars sneaking around. Fuck, I'm not gonna lie, I absolutely loved the rush that asylum brought. Now as T took more pictures, and me and S cracked jokes about him being scared, we ran into a huge room. A completely dark room. The other rooms were fairly well lit, with windows being removed and sunlight glowing through. But this room was something dark. Just incredibly dark. It had snowed about 1 week prior, and the snow was almost completely melted. This day it was easily 55 to 60 degrees. There was a huge ice pillar, something out of a video game. I was too confused to actually focus on anything else at the moment. It was just confusing. I understood that ice won't melt in the shade, but the sheer massive size of this pillar from roof to ceiling of at least 12 feet and a tree trunk around in circumference, that's when it dawned on me. Maybe I didn't fully understand it at the time, but a few things that wouldn't really happen anywhere else happened at that place. After being spooked enough of icy dark rooms, we climbed onto the roof and saw the melted snow in a huge, watery pile seeping through, looking like if it was just going to collapse at any moment. We didn't dare walk past the dry areas of the roof, and we decided to get off a different way. So we explored the biggest building, and now we were on our way to the main building. I circled it in blue in an attached photo. As we enter the decrepit, ancient building, it's the ice room all over again. The doors were rusted and broken, rooms tossed and ransacked. I climbed up onto a level by myself, since the staircase was blocked by some desk and wall shelves. I found nothing but sand in the staircase landing. This is in the middle of Maryland, not near any beach, and this staircase was covered in sand. It wasn't concrete, wasn't crushed rock. It was fine sand. It belonged on a shitty Maryland beach. I was terrified and spoke to S&T through a hole on the floor I was on. They told me I needed to go down there. Apparently they had seen a security guard roaming. I climbed over the metal barrier in the landing, climbed down and met up with S&T. We went out a window on the first floor and hid behind some random metal barrels or something of that sort, and we saw the car drive away. T was so fucking nervous and I started panicking. That's when him and S took off in a sprint. I chased after them, being a slower runner than them but still in pretty competent shape. As soon as we got to the forest, I was about 50 yards deep from the edge touching the asylum grounds. They were about another 50 yards away from me. I saw the groundskeeper. He didn't stop chasing after us. We ran so fast through the thicket, jumping over branches, avoiding the giant tree, and watching out for the abandoned building back to S's car. We all got into the car and drove. There was no word said. All of our heartbeats were through the roof. I can never replicate how amazing and equally terrifying that day was. Weeks of research into this place was hyping me and S up. The place, Forest Haven, was a local asylum and institution for people with mental and intelligence disabilities. From what I've read on it, is that they committed a Haitian woman with an intelligence deficit. She wasn't able to speak English, and they thought it would be easier to commit her to the asylum and forget. More atrocities that happened there involved dozens of patients strapped into beds, with the restraints altering the bones to the point they looked deformed with birth defects. A lot of kids and mentally impaired adults died from asphyxiation. I'll put more links in the description with articles related to it. I'm talking more about my experience and just needed to set up the context.